You've seen all the videos and read all the blogs on what you should be eating for Hashimoto's, but you're still not seeing the changes that you expect or that you deserve. But what can we say? Nutrition can be tricky. And that's why in today's video, I wanted to go over some of the biggest mistakes that I see people making when it comes to their nutrition and Hashimoto's. That way you can gain some perspective, make some adjustments that allows you to improve, and also rewards you for the effort that you're putting into the process. And if you like learning about natural ways that you can support your Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism, don't forget to like and subscribe. I appreciate it, and I think you'll benefit from all the content and the new videos that I release on Thursday mornings. But let's jump into it and start off with our first big mistake, which is lack of consistency. And here's why a lot of people get this wrong. What's the most common recommendation that we hear when it comes to diet and nutrition? Usually it's keep things in moderation. Yes, some foods might be better than others, but as long as we don't eat too much, or if we don't have too much of that bad or sweet stuff, then it's okay to include it in our approach. However, it's this idea of moderation that is really holding a lot of people with Hashimoto's back. Moderation can be an okay framework to work around. It's not my favorite, but it can be okay. But when it comes to autoimmunity, we really need to shift the way that we think about things. The reason for this is because a lot of the issues that occur around food and Hashimoto's has to do less with the amount that we're eating and has more to do with the frequency of exposure. Even in small amounts, there are going to be certain foods that don't fit or interact well with your body and with your immune system. And when your already sensitive immune system sees something that it doesn't like, it's going to generate a magnified and systemic response. The way I often explain this to patients is to think about it less like having something spicy than dealing with some heartburn or maybe some uncomfortable bowel movements the next day, and instead think of it more like how your body would respond to an infection or the flu. When it comes to Hashimoto's, foods don't just irritate our gut because of that immune system involvement. And this system-wide increase in inflammation, sure, it can cause bloating, digestive discomfort, changes in bowel movements, and all of those things, but it can also cause fatigue, brain fog, joint pain, headaches and migraines, skin reactions, and more. And once the system is flared up, it's going to take some time to recover. And for some people, that might be a few days, and for others, it could be weeks to months. So this is why people's lack of consistency is leading to their lack of improvement. I think we all get it in our head that, having a little bit of something here or there isn't going to hurt us. But the problem is that little something here or there starts to occur at a frequency where our body is perpetually flared up and never has that time to recover. And if we're always in a flared up or inflamed state, well, you can bet that we're not going to be doing any healing. So then the question always becomes, of these foods that I don't respond well to, how much of them is too much? And the answer to that is, I don't know. But the easy way to address it is to simply do some food tracking. If you want to hit a goal, then you need to know where you're starting from. Just like if you were trying to run your best ever 5K, it doesn't do you much good if you don't know what you ran last time. So we have to establish that baseline first, then we can work from there. By using a food tracker app or simply a handwritten food journal, you can get a better idea of what your nutrition looks like. Remember, this isn't supposed to be something that stresses you out, nor is it something that I expect you to do forever. It's simply a way to provide you with the data and the information that you need to be able to make changes and make improvements for the better. If your tracking shows that maybe you're having gluten every day, even though you thought you cut back, and you're continuing to have symptoms, well, then you're having too much of it. And again, that frequency and lack of consistency is what is creating that irritation to your system. Now that you have a baseline, you can do things differently, and you can continue to use that tracking to make sure you're hitting your goals. Again, over the years, I've talked to a lot of people who will say, for example, yeah, I'm gluten-free and I do a pretty good job with it. But when we look at the data, that's not necessarily the case. And it's this lack of consistency which is preventing them from getting better. And the second big mistake that I wanted to discuss today is only addressing one potential food sensitivity at a time. And let me explain what I mean. Now, I realize I already committed one nutritional sin today by saying moderation isn't a great approach, and I'm about to commit another within that moderation framework, which is that we probably should test removing multiple food groups from your diet at one time. And again, I know heads are exploding right now because so many recommendations say that removing things is the last thing that you want to do. It could potentially create cravings or bad habits around food, but it doesn't matter how much we want to moderate a food if it doesn't fit well with our body. And if there are multiple foods that are doing this, then we need to be more thorough in our approach. Plus, if you ask me, I think it's those ultra-processed and refined foods that are causing bad habits around eating, but that's a discussion for another day. So in real life, the way that I see this breaking down for my patients is they will read or see a video that tells them, hey, gluten might not be the best thing for Hashimoto's. So in an effort to be scientific and test out that one particular food to see if it actually is a problem for them, they'll keep their diet exactly the same and only remove the gluten-containing foods. Now, for myself, coming from a science background and having a very analytical approach, this makes total sense to me. We want to minimize variables and we want to test a single intervention. However, it's this way of thinking that, although it might be good in a research setting, actually undermines the complexity of our immune system. If you had one hole in the bottom of your bucket, then sure, change things one at a time and find the best way to plug that hole. But when it comes to Hashimoto's and autoimmunity and the way that these diseases affect us systemically, then I can guarantee that we have more than one hole we need to deal with. So even if going gluten-free does benefit you to some degree, and it does patch one of the holes in your bucket, there's usually other problems that we need to attend to. And these other problems can perpetuate symptoms to the point where someone might think, yeah, I went gluten-free, but I really didn't feel all that much better. Some things might have been a bit better, but it was hard for me to tell. And that's because we have these other contributing factors, and we need a more comprehensive approach. I've spoken before about how nutritional approaches for people with Hashimoto's are going to look different from person to person, and they exist somewhere on a spectrum from less strict to more strict. And if you want to check out that video, I'll link it for you in the cards. But just like the exposure and frequency of consumption of one food can hold you back, eating multiple foods that can cause some amount of irritation can do the exact same thing. So if you're out there doing the scientific approach, one food at a time thing, I see you, I applaud you, but I want you to know that it's probably better to do things differently. And instead of counting up how many times you're having gluten in a week and then removing that, and then later counting up how many times you're having dairy and then removing that, I would recommend thinking about all of those potential foods as irritants and including them in the same category. Now remember, I'm just giving a few examples here and I'm not saying that all of these foods are bad for all people. But if there are a number of foods that you are clearly reacting to, whatever they might be, then that exposure frequency needs to be considered as a group rather than one-off incidences that don't have any impact on one another. So once again, do some tracking, get some data, make some changes. But do it in a way where all of these foods are considered, and don't be afraid to pull multiple groups out at one time. Even if you remove something that isn't a problem for you, if you can get yourself to start feeling better, then it's going to be much easier for you to judge which foods work and which ones don't once you start to reintroduce them. I said to a patient the other day, it's a lot easier to tell if a food is contributing to our joint pain if we don't have any joint pain. We're able to see the difference. But if we have joint pain all the time, then it can be really tough to know what's working for us and what isn't. And before we wrap up today, there's just a few other thoughts that I wanted to share with you. First off, nutrition can do a lot, but it isn't everything. And if you're already doing a great job with your food choices and you're being super consistent and you know it, but you're still not making the improvements that you want, then there's probably something else going on. I wanted to mention this because some of you might have been watching this video saying, I'm already tracking my food. I know exactly what it looks like. So how can I be more diligent than I already am? And you could be 100% right. So if your nutrition already looks good, you probably don't need to nutrition harder. There's definitely still hope for you to improve, but we might just need to look at the larger picture, and this video might not be the one for you. Next, I already mentioned this earlier in the video, but keep in mind as you're tracking that not all food reactions are going to be gut symptoms. So if you're having a food and it changes the way that you feel or function in any way, remember we used the example of how you feel when you have the flu, then that's important information for you to note. So if you were expecting the removal of gluten to help you out with your bloating and it doesn't help with that, well, that doesn't mean that removing gluten was a failure. Instead, maybe your brain fog and your concentration at work has improved. That's still valuable progress for us to take into consideration. And lastly, I know that nutrition can be overwhelming, but do your best and try to not get overwhelmed. Make a plan and decide on making changes that make the most sense for what you've seen with your health and your health history, while at the same time feel like something that you can be successful with. It's great to have a grandiose vision of what you want your nutrition and your health to look like, but it doesn't do us any good if we can't execute on it. So map out a plan of attack, get started making those changes, and build the ones in that feel the best. Once you establish a rhythm, you can always add to it and make other changes further down the line. But let me know down in the comments what you think about your nutrition and Hashimoto's. What's worked for you? What's really been a struggle? And what sort of changes have you made that have helped you to overcome those challenges? If you liked today's video but want some more help and would like to work with me one-on-one, either in person or virtually, you can start that process by sending an email to contact@seattlethyroidhelp.com. My staff will reach out to you and see if you qualify for a free consultation. During the consultation, we'll sit down and discuss your health history, answer any questions that you have, and make sure that we're a good fit to work together. It's absolutely no pressure, and I want to make sure that number one, this is something that I can help you with, and number two, you're in a spot that feels comfortable and supportive to your goals. If you'd rather do some things on your own, by now you probably know that you can grab either one of my free downloads, which are linked in the description box, or you can check out many of the other topics that I have available on the channel. But that's it for today, you guys. Love you. I hope you're doing well. Make sure you reach out if you have any questions. If you'd like to continue to learn, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click on the notification bell here on YouTube, or you can follow me on Instagram or Facebook for daily thyroid information. But my name is Dr. Bodle. I hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and I will see you in the next one.